I've never made a list of my favorite anime on this page, but in honor of Devilman Crybaby, I want to put together a top 5 in no particular order, because I just saw Devilman Crybaby a couple weeks ago, and there's a good chance that it belongs in that list. If I had to condense what it was that moved me about this show into a few sentences, it was most definitely Ryo's story. Ryo is a figure who was destroyed by desires that he never even understood. He was in love with Akira, and yet he also hated the world that gave birth to him. And he wanted to fulfill the calling of both of these emotions. He wanted to destroy the world while also possessing Akira. Anyone outside of Ryo's perspective could have seen that he cannot have both of these things at once, but Ryo's fatal flaw is that he thinks he's smarter than destiny, smarter than God. And so rather than compromise with reality and allow the world to coexist with Akira, he just blindly hits the self-destruct button on everything. On the world, on Akira, on himself. He destroys it all simply because he's incapable of taking a step back and allowing a reality to exist outside of his impossible will. And I think that's a problem that many of us suffer on a smaller scale. It's called denial. Ryo's story imagines what happens when you combine denial with the powers of a god. But anyways, my next favorite anime on this list of my top 5 ranked in no particular order is the 1995 Ghost in the Shell movie. Ghost in the Shell speaks to my personal philosophy as a secular person who is fascinated with the meaning of religion. I don't personally think that there's anything like a god, but I also cannot deny that the religious imagination speaks to me and to humanity more generally in a way that can offer existential satisfaction. And I think that Ghost in the Shell creates a rich case study of what that might look like in the context of a cyberpunk sci-fi future. The movie's about a woman named Motoko Kusanagi who has lately become obsessed with the Christian idea of salvation and afterlife. I've noticed that viewers of the movie don't always pick up on this obsession, but she embeds quotations and references to St. Paul in a few conversations, which help her to express the idea of a higher form of consciousness on the other side of death. But Kusanagi isn't interested in St. Paul's conception of the afterlife because she's like a card-carrying Christian. It has more to do with her experience of her own body as a cyborg, which in the context of Ghost in the Shell essentially means that she's a human brain that's been plugged into a synthetic mechanical body. Kusanagi's cybernetic body has given her a taste of what it's like to transcend the human condition. And yet she still remains unsatisfied with this taste, because the old limitations of her human body have only given way to new limitations. She may be able to see more clearly and think more deeply, but there are still things she cannot see and thoughts she cannot access. And so she's stuck on this treadmill of craving ever higher forms of experience. And that's why St. Paul's ideas of Christian salvation have rooted themselves in her imagination. St. Paul speaks of a higher form of consciousness on the other side of human life, where all of our limitations have finally been overcome. And Kusanagi has become transfixed by this idea because it gives material shape to the thing that she has begun to crave with every new cybernetic enhancement. And that's all I have to say about Ghost in the Shell. The third anime on my list of 5 favorites is Neon Genesis Evangelion. I said a little bit earlier that I'm not ranking these anime in any particular order, but I'm going to break that rule and say that Evangelion is easily my favorite anime of all time. There's a lot of ways to describe what Evangelion is about, but to me it is a story about why it's possible to feel lonely even when we're surrounded by our friends. And it investigates the way that we destroy ourselves and others when we attempt to overcome this condition in the wrong way. I'm not going to say much more about Evangelion here in this video, but if you want to hear me apply that theme to the characters in the show in greater detail, you should check out my Evangelion playlist. For now, I'm just going to move on to the 4th anime in my list of 5 favorites, which is another movie called Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. Nausicaa basically captures my perspective on human history writ large, which balances a deep sense of pessimism together with the belief that love is the only thing that matters and it is the savior of all things. The character of Nausicaa lives in a world defined by an ancient war between humanity and nature, and she intervenes in this war while recognizing a couple of things that no one else seems to really grasp. The first is that humanity cannot win, and the second is that this war could literally end today if that's what humanity wanted. It's 100% a war of human aggression, and nature is willing to forgive us if we turn back now. The only thing we need to do as human beings and societies is to treat all life as equal, human and non-human alike. But the tragedy of the movie is that equality seems to be the one thing that human society will not tolerate. We do not even permit equality amongst ourselves, much less with the non-human creatures that inhabit the earth and sky outside our cities. Everyone knows that love can save us. But the reason we struggle to act on this knowledge is because it only takes a single dissenting voice, a single warship or missile, to destroy the fragile balance that love creates. But the character of Nausicaa invites us to embrace the messianic power of love anyways, even on the understanding that this power will fail today or perhaps tomorrow, because the simple fact is that there is no other way to succeed. Now, I've got one last anime on this list of 5 favorites, and I'm going to keep it brief. It is Azumanga Daioh. I credit this show with getting me back into anime as an adult. I had a really bad breakup a few years back, and I was depressed to the point of debilitation. I really could not do anything. And that was when I happened to watch Azumanga Daioh, just looking for something that goes down easy. And it was such a delightful story about childhood friendship that it brought tears to my eyes, and I watched it twice in a row. And over the years, the show has become symbolic to me of a unique quality that anime achieves with a lot of its comedy, where it combines hilarious jokes with really sincere and heartwarming messages about friendship. And that combination in particular just inspires happiness in my heart, because why wouldn't it?